Hello YouTube, welcome back to part 2 of our look at the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons Monk. In part 1 we looked at the progression of the monk through various editions of the Dungeons & Dragons game. In this video we're going to look at the regular monk abilities that all monks gain in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. If you want to follow along with the monk features, the class description can be found on page 76. So to begin with the basics, monks in 5th edition roll d8s for hit dice. They are proficient with simple weapons and short swords, so all simple weapons and short swords. They can also choose to be proficient with one type of artisan's tools, and the list of that you can find on page 154 of the player's handbook. Or instead of being proficient with an artisan's tool, they could choose to become proficient with a musical instrument. And as all other previous editions, the monk is not proficient with any form of armor. As far as their saving throws go, they are proficient with the strength and the dexterity saving throws. So those are their two main saving throw abilities. Now, as a monk, when you're designing it, the two main ability scores that you really want to have as your highest would probably be dexterity and wisdom, as both of those scores get used for various things throughout the monk's abilities. Constitution is probably going to be your third highest, just because it's good for your Constitution saving throws and hit points. Monks at first level, so going through the levels now, they gain an ability called Unarmored Defense at first level, which allows them to, as long as they're not wearing any armor, treat their base armor class as 10, plus their dexterity modifier, plus their wisdom modifier. So if you have a monk with a dexterity of 16 and a 15 for the wisdom, their AC would be 15 total, because it would start at 10, plus 3 for dexterity, plus 2 for wisdom. It's very similar to the barbarians unarmored, except instead of being dexterity and con, in this case it's dexterity and wisdom. Also, monks are skilled martial artists, which is carried over from all those previous versions of the game, and they gain a martial arts ability. Now, with the martial arts ability, they can actually use their dexterity modifier to replace the attack roll and damage modifiers when attacking with their unarmed strikes or with any monk weapons. Now, monk weapon in 5th edition is defined as a short sword and any simple weapon that does not have the two-handed weapon property. A weapon may have versatile and still qualify as a monk weapon. So, for example, a quarterstaff has versatile and not two-handed, meaning that you can choose to wield it as a two-handed weapon, but it's not primarily designed to be a two-handed weapon. So if you're using a quarterstaff as a monk, you would be able to use your dexterity for the attacks and damage. In addition to that, the monks also have a martial arts damage chart that you progress through as you level up. So with their martial arts ability, they would roll 1d4 for damage starting at first level, but as they progress through levels, they start to increase the die size that they would roll whenever they use the martial arts ability. And this can go all the way up to 1d10 starting at 17th level. The damage die can be used for unarmed strikes, but it can also be used to replace the damage die of any monk weapon that they wield. Also, when a monk attacks with an unarmed strike or attacks with a monk weapon, using the attack action, they can make an additional unarmed strike using their bonus action. The attack must be an unarmed strike, though, so if you were using a short sword or a one-handed simple weapon and you wanted to use your second or your extra attack for martial arts, it would have to be an unarmed strike. So at first level you would have to do it as a d4, but it is still an extra attack at first level, which is pretty good. Starting at second level, the monk gains key points. So key points, they start with 2 of these points, and the amount of points that they gain increases as the monk goes through the level up process. The number of points can be found on the monk's level progression chart, and the actual chart for their progression is on page 77. Key points can be used to grant additional abilities. Once you spend the key points, they can't be replenished until you take a short or a long rest. Now, during that rest, you have to spend 30 minutes of that rest meditating specifically to regain the key points. So, in the very rare instance that you're able to take a short rest, but you don't have the 30 minutes to be able to meditate, you may gain other benefits from a short rest, but not get the key points back. But I don't see that being a very likely scenario, so you should be fine with that. Now, some key points or some key abilities do force the target to make a saving throw. So when they do that, the DC for the saving throw starts at 8, plus their proficiency bonus of the monk, plus their wisdom modifier. So if we used our monk from the earlier example with the 15 wisdom, the DC for their abilities when they gain key points would be a total of 12. It would be 8 for their base, 2 for the proficiency bonus, and 2 for the wisdom modifier. So all monks can use key points for the following abilities. The first one is Flurry of Blows. So immediately after taking the attack action, the monk may spend 1 key point to make 2 unarmed strikes as a bonus action. The second ability is called Patient Defense. So you spend 1 key point to take the dodge action as a bonus action on your turn, and it lasts until the start of your next turn. So what the dodge action does is until the start of your next turn, any attacks that are made against the monk are done at disadvantage, and the monk would have advantage on any dexterity saving throws. Excuse me. And finally, their third key power that they gain at second level is called Step of the Wind. So you spend 1 key point to take the disengage or dash action as a bonus action on your turn. In addition, the monk's jump distance is doubled for the turn. So those are the 3 key abilities that they start off with. Now, all 3 of those abilities do use the monk's bonus action. It's worth remembering that you only receive 1 bonus action per round, so be careful when you decide to use your key points. It's also should be noted that the monk's martial arts feature that grants an extra unarmed strike is also a bonus action. So you can only use essentially one or the other. You're not able to use the bonus attack for your martial arts and then spend your key point for a Flurry of Blows. So it's one or the other. Also at second level, the monks gain an ability called Unarmored Movement, which is an increase to their movement speed so long as they're not wearing any armor. The increase starts as an additional 10 feet. So if our example monk was a human, he would, at third level, have a movement of 40 feet. So 30 feet for their base speed as a human, plus an extra 10 for being a monk. This does increase as the monk goes through levels, reaching an additional 30 feet of movement by the time they reach 18th level. Also at 9th level, the unarmored movement can be used on a vertical surface or across liquids without falling. So they get a few extra movement abilities from that option. Now at third level, the monk chooses its monastic tradition, which I'm going to be discussing in part 3. So there's a few different ones to go through, so I'm going to dedicate an entire video to them. So at this point, we're going to skip over that, and if you're interested in the monastic traditions, then check out part 3 once it's available. Now also at third level, the monk gains the ability to deflect missiles. This ability uses the monk's reaction for the round. Deflect missiles can be used when a monk is struck with a ranged weapon attack. When used, the monk reduces the damage by 1d10 plus the monk's level plus the monk's dexterity modifier. So as an example, we got our d10 here. We'll just roll that. So in this example, I rolled a 5. We're using a third level monk, so that's 5 plus 3 for third level. And using our previous example one, their dexterity modifier would have been plus 3 for a 16 dexterity. So right now I'm able to reduce damage by 11 points. Now, one of the really cool things that the monk gains with this feature is that if the damage that they reduce, the attack damage by would reduce it to 0. So let's just say I've got 11 here that I could reduce it by, but it only did, like, I don't know, 8 points of damage. Then you can actually reduce damage to 0, and then you catch the projectile in the monk's hand. The monk has to have a free hand in order to do it, and the projectile has to be small enough to be held in one hand. But if they do that, the monk catches a projectile, and then they can spend 1 key point to throw it back as a ranged attack with the weapon or ammunition as part of the same reaction that they use to reduce the damage. And for this, the monk adds a proficiency bonus to the attack damage, or to the attack roll, sorry, and the missile counts as a monk weapon. So you would want to look at the damage chart for the monk unarmed strikes or monk weapons for that, because it does count as a monk weapon. Now at 4th level, the monk gains Slow Fall. So Slow Fall uses the monk's reaction to reduce falling damage by 5 times the monk's level. So at 4th level, a monk could reduce falling damage by 20 points. At 5th level, the monk gains an extra attack, allowing them to attack twice whenever they use the attack action, And then you can always have your extra attack for martial arts or 2 extra attacks if you use a flurry of blows on top of that. Also, at 5th level, the monk gains stunning strikes. So after hitting a target with a melee weapon attack, the monk can spend 1 ki point, and then the struck enemy would then have to roll a Constitution saving throw, and if they fail, the enemy is stunned until the end of the monk's turn. So unarmed strikes or monk weapon attacks can be used for that feature. At 6th level, the monk's unarmed strikes count as magical for the purposes of overcoming resistance and immunity to non-magical attacks and damage. At 7th level, excuse me. At 7th level, the monk gains evasion and stillness of mind. With evasion, effects that make you roll a dexterity saving throw for half damage instead do no damage on a successful save and only half damage on a failed save. With stillness of mind, it allows you to spend your action to end one effect on yourself that is causing you to be charmed or frightened. At 10th level, the monk gains purity of body, which makes him immune to disease and poison. 13th level, the monk gains the ability called Tongue of the Sun and the Moon, which allows the monk to understand all spoken languages and allows any creature that can understand a language to understand what the monk says. This pertains to verbal communication only, so it does not allow the monk to read any language, nor does it give them the ability to understand something like Drow Sign Language. Diamond Soul at 14th level makes the monk proficient with all saving throws. So instead of just being your strength and dexterity, they now add their proficiency bonus to any type of saving throw that they make. Also, you can spend 1 ki point to re-roll a failed save. However, you must use the second result even if that result is still a failure. Now, I did a little bit of research into this, just because there are a few questions that I kind of had about it. So I read through a thread from Jeremy Crawford, who was one of the lead designers for the 5th edition Player's Handbook, and he did verify that Diamond Soul does apply to death saving throws as well, because death saving throws is still a type of saving throw. So if your monk is knocked down and dying, and let's just say you've already failed once and you roll a natural 1, you could use a ki point if you had it left over to re-roll that save. So that's actually a really, really great feature and something that wasn't very clear in the Player's Handbook. So if you had any questions about that, that's your answer, and that comes straight from the designer himself. At 15th level, the monk gains Timeless Body, which stops the monk from suffering the effects of aging. They cannot be aged through magical means either, so any spell or effect that would age them no longer has that effect on them. Now, it doesn't prevent the monk from dying of old age, but it does prevent them from having any negative effects that may occur with any type of aging in the game. Also, as an added bonus, the monk no longer requires food or water once they gain this ability. And then at 18th level, the monks gain Empty Body. With this ability, the monk can spend 4 ki points to become invisible for 1 minute. During that minute, the monk has resistance to all damage except for force damage. The monk can also spend 8 ki points to cast Astral Projection without requiring any material components. However, if they do this, it only affects the monk itself. Now, with the becoming invisible, it's not as per the invisibility spell, so it doesn't say anything in there that attacking breaks the invisibility. So if you use this ability, spend the 4 ki points for 1 minute, you are invisible regardless of what actions that you take. Again, I think that's something that's worth noting. And then finally, at 20th level, the monk gains Perfect Self. With that ability, whenever the monk rolls initiative, if they don't have any ki points left, they regain 4 ki points. So they have to have 0, but if they have 0 when they get into a fight, then they automatically gain 4 that they are able to use. And you'd probably want to use them in that fight. Anyway, that concludes our list of abilities that all monks get. So those are the base features that any 5th edition monk is going to gain as they progress through the levels. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it helped with a few things, especially Diamond Soul, I think, was probably one of the biggest things that I wasn't even aware about until I did some research on it. So like I said, I hope you found it helpful, and I hope you check out part 3, and that's where I'm going to go over all of the abilities that are granted by each of the monks' monastic traditions. Anyway, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch the videos. I always welcome comments and feedback, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you.